Caro Quintero was still wanted for his involvement in drug trafficking, as well as the 1985 murders. He was at large as a wanted fugitive in Mexico. The United States offered a $20 million reward for information leading to his capture, the highest value among fugitives currently listed on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. Rafael Caro Quintero had the world and everything in it. But he then created his own downfall. Not every dog gets his day. Drug lord Rafael Caro Quintero was born in 1952 in Sinaloa, Mexico. He learned the art of cultivating marijuana and grew marijuana in a small greenhouse in the backyard of his ex-police friend, Miguel Gallardo's house. In less than 5 years, Caro Quintero managed to buy several other ranches in the surrounding areas and began to amass larger amounts of money and influence. Having formed the now defunct Guadalajara cartel, Caro Quintero, working with Gallardo, shipped large quantities of marijuana to the United States. In November 1984, the Mexican authorities raided a 2,500-acre ranch known as El Buffalo in the state of Chihuahua, owned by Caro Quintero. The authorities reportedly burned more than 10,000 tons of marijuana, totaling a loss of around $160 million. Enrique Camarena, who had been working undercover in Mexico, was said to be responsible for leading the authorities to the ranch. Caro Quintero blamed Enrique Kiki Camarena, an American intelligence officer for the United States, for the raid on his marijuana plantation. Camarena was kidnapped in Guadalajara, allegedly on orders from Caro Quintero. His tortured body was found a month later. An increasingly paranoid Rafael, at the time doing a lot of cocaine, then murders American tourists Alberto Radillac and John Clay Walker, mistaking them for DEA agents as they dined in a seafood restaurant. He is scolded by Felix Gallardo for killing unarmed tourists and is increasingly alienated from cartel affairs. The drug lord had long been one of the FBI's most wanted criminals. Eventually, with the $20 million bounty placed on him through the State Department's narcotic rewards program, the United States federal government responded aggressively to the death of Camarena. Mexican politicians were pressured into giving up their cartel connections. Thousands of soldiers and police officers lost their jobs. With the manhunt for him, Rafael decided to flee to Costa Rica. Caro Quintero was eventually betrayed by his old friends, Gallardo, and extradited back to Mexico, where he was imprisoned. After serving 28 years in prison, Caro Quintero was freed from jail on August 2013, when a state court concluded that he had been trialed improperly. What seems as mixed up judiciary proceedings, Quintero had been tried for murder in a Mexican federal court when that was considered a state crime. Caro Quintero was still wanted for his involvement in drug trafficking, as well as the 1985 murders. He was at large as a wanted fugitive in Mexico. The United States offered a $20 million reward for information leading to his capture, the highest value among fugitives currently listed on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. Caro Quintero was no longer able to live the lavish lifestyle he had when he was a major drug lord. Living in a shabby mountain home, he appeared to be aging and frail. During an interview, he rehashed that he wanted to be left in peace. He also claimed he was suffering from a prostate-related illness and had not been speaking to his wife or any of his children. He denied allegations of being a senior leader in the Sinaloa cartel or being active in the drug trade. Caro Quintero lost his final appeal to avoid extradition to the United States. He was arrested in Mexico and is pending extradition to the United States. While the 69-year-old Caro Quintero is no longer considered a major player in international drug trafficking, the symbolic impact of its capture is likely to be significant on both sides of the border. Mexico's unwillingness to extradite Caro Quintero to the United States prior to his release from prison had always been a source of tension between the two countries. Despite the United States' request for a fast-track extradition, a district court judge granted Caro Quintero a temporary suspension a few days after his arrest. If the intention is to delay the extradition of Caro Quintero, this could go all the way to the Supreme Court, and that could take months or even years. The legal route is very long, and Mexican justice is very slow. Denial of the drug trafficker's extradition is due to either corruption, political negotiations, or judicial incompetence. It appears that the Mexican government does not have the will to extradite Caro Quintero. Others did not rule out the idea of the Mexican government potentially using Caro Quintero to influence trade negotiations. There was less certainty about the commitment of Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who had made clear of his disinterest in pursuing drug lords. Yet, 3 days after López Obrador and U.S. President Joe Biden met in the White House, the most wanted target of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the man allegedly responsible for the murder of a DEA agent more than 3 decades ago. A federal grand jury in the District of Columbia returned a superseding indictment against Quintero. He was served with a provisional arrest warrant requesting his extradition to the United States. Quintero was charged with 1 count of conspiracy to manufacture and distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine and over 1,000 kilograms of marijuana, intending and knowing that those substances would be imported into the United States. If convicted, he could be sentenced to life in prison for being a principal leader of a continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics trafficking, using a firearm in furtherance of his drug crimes, and participating in a money laundering conspiracy. A federal district court judge will determine any sentence after considering the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. The extradition process can often be drawn out depending on the target's willingness to fight it and the government's desire to speed it along. A judge reviews the United States extradition request, including evidence supporting the allegations, and gives an option to the Foreign Affairs Ministry on whether it meets criteria for extradition. Even if the ministry decides that the extradition should proceed, Caro Quintero would have the ability to appeal the United States as a tremendous investment in the control of drugs into the country, said a top security official in the Department of Homeland Security. They had hunted Quintero down, captured him in Costa Rica at great expense and using a great amount of resources, and then having to do the same capturing him recently. They said that if he escapes a 3rd time, they may never get their hands on him again. The Justice Department's Office of International Affairs and Office of Enforcement Operations provided significant assistance with securing the arrest and extradition. Rafael Caro Quintero is currently in custody in Mexico as extradition proceedings are ongoing. Whatever the reason for keeping Caro Quintero in Mexico, it gives the former kingpin more opportunities to evade justice. And then we die.